Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of Musical Musings, airing every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and we broadcast this program to you from Rajamachan University of Technology, Peranakan. I will be bringing this program to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce an artist and a song to you, and we will discuss a little bit about the artist and then a little bit about the main themes of the song, like what the song is all about. Then we'll take a break and listen to the song. And when we come back for the second part of the program, we will analyze the lyrics. Lyrics are the words to the song. We will take a look especially at anything that may be difficult to understand. Any difficult vocabulary, slang, English sayings, anything like that that's hard to understand. Then we'll have the news and the latest updates from the university as always.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for the Musical Musings program. I am an American English teacher here at Rajamachan University of Technology, Peranakan. I have been teaching here for about 8 years, and I have been in Thailand for 8 years, so I have been teaching here at the university the entire time I have been here in Thailand. And one of the things I like to do in my classes, and of course I'm an English teacher, I do occasionally teach some science, but primarily an English teacher. I do like to incorporate music into the classroom sometimes, and so that's why I'm bringing to you this music program. So today, for this week's episode, we are going to be doing the song Send in the Clowns, sung by Judy Collins. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this song is we're kind of building off of our previous episode. Now, if you follow along every week, you'll know what our previous episode was, but for those who had just kind of stumbled across this, maybe you were searching for the name of this song on YouTube or something, I happened to stumble across this. For last week's song, we did the song... sorry, I had to think of the name of the song there. Well, it's sometimes called Clouds, but it's the primary name of the song is Both Sides Now. And that's by Joni Mitchell. Interestingly, even though Joni Mitchell performed the song, and it was quite popular, her performance of it was quite popular, and she wrote the song, Judy Collins' version of the song, when she sang it, is actually probably the most popular version. That's of Both Sides Now. But I wanted to do the Joni Mitchell version because she's the person that actually wrote the song. Now, I should say that with Judy Collins, we're doing Send in the Clowns. I do prefer to do a song that someone wrote. Now, most of the songs that Judy Collins wrote herself did not become extremely popular. That's not to say she didn't have any popular songs at all. She had a few. We'll mention a couple at the end of the program. But her most famous performances, the songs she's most famous for, are songs that were written by other people. And so this week we are actually not going to do a song that's written by the person who sang it. I do prefer to do that, but we've done this before, where the artist didn't write the song. In fact, there are some artists who write almost none of their songs. Especially now, in modern times, that's actually even more common. Most bands out there do not write a lot. Well, I shouldn't say most. Most pop artists don't write their own songs. Most of the other, most like heavy metal bands, a lot of them do write their own songs. But most pop artists today do not write their own songs, which I think is unfortunate because it means you never really know how talented they actually are. I mean, sure, maybe they can sing. Or with some groups like K-pop bands and boy bands and things like that, it's more important for them to be able to dance. So maybe they can dance. Maybe they can sing. But, it's music. Writing the songs is maybe the most important thing. And some of these people can't write songs. And I like to write and play music. I play guitar and sing music myself. And I can tell you myself that I am bad at all three. So I know how difficult it is to write good songs. So that's why I prefer to use a song that the person wrote to kind of showcase their talent. But we do sometimes make exceptions for that. Whenever we do a pop artist, which we don't do a whole lot of on here, but we do some. When we do a pop artist, it might be a song written by someone else. Even a few rock songs, because they might get, a band might like redo it. We did a song called Ram Jam a few months back. And that song was, I'm sorry, the band was Ram Jam. The song was Black Betty. The song Black Betty was taken from some really, really old song and modified. So that's interesting. And they did actually add verses. So they did write some of it themselves, sort of. So those types of songs can still be very interesting, very good to do. But again, I try to stick to songs that the artist wrote. I try to. But sometimes we don't do that. And this week is one of those weeks. So Judy Collins did not write Send in the Clowns. All right, so before we get to that, before we start talking about Send in the Clowns, let's talk a little bit about Judy Collins. So she was born in 1939 in Seattle, Washington. So she's quite old now. She's already had her birthday this year, so she is 86. 86 years old. She is still performing, believe it or not. She's alive, still performs. I have not looked at what her concert schedule is. My guess is she doesn't perform a lot, given her age. She probably tries to relax a lot and just be comfortable. But she does perform. She is still active, even at 86. So again, she was born in Seattle, but Seattle isn't really kind of where she grew up. At the age of 10, her family moved to Denver, Colorado. And in case you're not familiar with geography of the U.S., Seattle, Washington, you might have heard of. That's like the home of Starbucks, I think, and Boeing airplanes, I think, are both from Seattle. I have to think about that. One of them might be from Portland, but I think they're both from Seattle. And that is on the west coast of the U.S., the Northwest. Like California is what people think of as being West Coast, and it's warm, although Northern California can get quite cold at times, especially in the winter. Oregon is north of that. Washington is north of that on the Canadian border. So that's where Seattle is. Seattle is the biggest city in Washington. It's not the capital. Olympia is the capital of Washington, but Seattle is the biggest city in Washington State. Don't get Washington State and Washington, D.C. confused. Washington, D.C. is all the way over towards the East Coast. That is the capital city of America. That's not a state. So she is from Washington State. But again, she moved to Denver, Colorado. Now, where Colorado is that's a little bit to the east. It's still out in the western part of the U.S., but it's a little bit more to the east. It's in the Rocky Mountains. So that's in the mountains. And that's where she grew up. And her father was a musician, so she was always into music the whole time she grew up. The first time she ever did a public performance was like at the age of 13. I believe she was playing piano at that time. So she's always done music. So it's a little hard to say exactly when her professional career started, but generally we think about that as like when you start making money, when you start getting paid to perform. And even then, I'm not really sure when her exact first performance was that she got paid for. I don't even know if she remembers at this point. It was such a long time ago. But eventually she moved to New York City. She moved to an area of New York City called Greenwich Village. She moved there around 1960. And around that time, like the 1960s and even into the 1970s, heck, maybe even a little bit into the 80s, although I think it was starting to fade then. But the 1960s and 1970s, Greenwich Village was a really big area for artists. Not just musicians, other types of artists as well. But musicians as well. So in 1960, she moved to Greenwich Village, and that's where her career really got started. So she would have been around 21 at the time. And so she was doing gigs, which is a gig, in case you're not familiar with music terminology. That's like doing a concert, but we generally talk about gigs as being small. So it might be at you might be at a bar and she would usually perform by herself. So she's just performing by herself there at a bar, playing guitar, singing, whatever. Okay, so again, she moved there in 1960. And that, again, is really when her career began. She released her first album in 1961, so she would have been 22 at that time. And her style of music, you can probably guess, since we talked about this in our previous episode with Joni Mitchell, her style of music is going to be the same, since she was singing Joni Mitchell's song. And that is, she is a folk singer. Now, if you're not familiar with folk songs, these are songs, they tend to be kind of soft, kind of slow. You can certainly have some crossover, like there are folk rock songs, and so those might be a little bit harder and a little bit faster because they're rock. You can certainly get that. But pure folk songs tend to be a little bit on the slow side, a little bit softer. And as far as playing the music, like if you were to play it on a guitar, the chords are usually fairly simple. Certainly not always, but usually. And I'm pretty familiar with this because I told you I'm not very good at playing the guitar, so I have to go with easy songs. So I tend to play a lot of folk songs because they're easy to play. So I can tell you that not all of them are. There are certainly some folk songs that have some trickier chords in them that I have a little more trouble with. But generally, they tend to be easier. And just for the fact that they're slower also makes them easier because you have time to move your hands around. I'm not very fast with my hands. I'm not very good at that. So you can kind of move your hands around pretty slowly when you're playing playing a folk song, usually. So if they're so simple, so slow, so easy, why are they popular? You would think maybe that's just like kids' music then. You know, like those little simple tunes that you hear kids sing sometimes. Well, the reason they're popular is because their lyrics are usually good. They tell a story. The focus is on the lyrics, and that's why they keep the music simple. They don't want you going crazy, focusing on some wild, outrageous, awesome guitar solo. Or even a drum solo, which you don't hear quite as often, but you certainly hear that sometimes in some songs. They don't want you getting caught up on that, in that. Or even a synth solo. You hear synthesizer solos sometimes in some songs. It's usually guitar, but it can be other things. They don't want you getting caught up in that. They want you focused on the story. So folk songs tell a story. So the lyrics are usually quite interesting, involved, or at least, even if the lyrics are simple, there are a few folk songs like that, they do tell a story. Okay, so she's another folk singer, just like Joni Mitchell is. Judy Collins is a folk singer. And as with most folk singers, there's not a lot of genre crossover. Some pop songs can be slow, so sometimes a folk singer might sing some pop songs. But generally folk singers are folk singers. I talk to you a lot about, in this program, about how I don't like focusing on genres because there's so much crossover that it's almost pointless to talk about genres. But when you're talking about folk singers, most folk singers will stick to folk. The other thing a lot of them do, and I mentioned this last week when we were doing the episode with Joni Mitchell, is that a lot of folk singers will sing other folk singers' songs. In other words, a song written by one folk singer, another folk singer will pick up and sing. One of the reasons I think this is so common is because they're telling stories, so they like stories. So these singers like stories. So if someone else writes a good story, you want to perform it. You want to sing that. You want to do that song. So you see it much more often in folk music than in other styles of music. Certainly other singers will do that. Like a lot of people are familiar with Whitney Houston's song, I Will Always Love You. Well, that's not her song. A lot of people don't know that because hers was the most famous. We've done that song on this channel, and we did the artist who performed it before her, and that was Dolly Parton. And I'm not even sure Dolly Parton wrote the song. I think she might have been the first person to record it, maybe. I'm not even sure about that, but I think she was the first person to record it, but I don't even know if she wrote it. So it happens in other genres of music, but in folk music, it happens the most. And I mention that because Judy Collins is really an example of that. Very few of her most popular songs are her songs. Definitely there are a couple of songs. At the end of our episodes, I always like to tell you some other songs by an artist to listen to. And a couple of the songs that I mention are going to be songs that she wrote. So I'm not saying she's not a good songwriter. She has written a couple of songs that did become quite popular. Judy Collins is an excellent songwriter. I'm just saying that she mostly focused on songs that she got from other people and doing her own rendition of them, her own version of them. And that brings us to our song today, Send in the Clowns. This is a song by someone else. Now, this was off of her 10th album, which she came out with in 1975. That's one good thing about doing songs from other people. It's really easy to come up to turn out those albums because you don't have to write the song. You're just taking songs from someone else. So she recorded this for her album in 1975. And this song was actually written by Stephen Sondheim, which is interesting. Why is that interesting? Who the heck is Stephen Sondheim? Stephen Sondheim is known for writing musicals. So this is actually for a stage performance. It was written for the musical A Little Night Music in 1973. And what the song is about, it's a woman basically talking about her disappointments in life, but she is specifically talking about a relationship. And you'll see that, I'll explain that more when we get into the second part of our program and we're going through the lyrics, and you'll see that and you'll understand that. So you may wonder why it talks about sending in the clowns. Why clowns are supposed to be happy, right? Two things about this. First of all, the point of sending in the clowns is to make us laugh because it's a sad song. We need someone to make us feel better, to make us laugh. But there's kind of a double meaning here. At least one time in the song when they use that word, What they're referring to is a more of like a court jester type of clown, which is also called a fool. They're kind of playing a double meaning here. And they mean a fool, like someone that's been fooled, someone that's been tricked. They don't mean that all the time. Most of the time they do mean to bring laughter. But there's one place in the song where they actually mean that. And the only reason I know that, the only reason I've picked up on that, is because Stephen Sondheim actually explained it. And he even said that maybe he should have called the song Send in the Fools. Of course, Send in the Clowns I think sounds better, so I don't think he made a mistake with that. But it does make the song a little harder to understand. Because there's one line in here where he says send in the clowns, and it doesn't really mean clowns. Okay? So again, it's a song about, it's a woman singing it, and it's about her disappointments in life, particularly her disappointment in a relationship. And I'll explain a little bit more about that relationship when we go through the lyrics, because you'll see some details where it might be confusing what we're talking about, and you'll understand it when you understand the nature of that relationship. So, okay, let's go ahead and get to the song now. As always, for anyone joining us on YouTube, we cannot embed the video for you because of copyright reasons. So please click on the link above that we will give you. That will take you over to the video for the song. And once you're done with that, you can just jump back here to this video for the second part of our program. And we, of course, can embed music because we are a radio station. So for those of you just listening, whether you're on streaming or on the radio, you should be able to listen just fine. All right, now, let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome back, folks. All right, so that was Send in the Clowns by Judy Collins. Again, as I mentioned, it's written by Stephen Sondheim for the musical A Little Night Magic. And it is about a woman's disappointments in life. And in the musical, this song comes up right after she can't get with the man she wants to be with. Now, let me explain their relationship a little bit. The song will make more sense. So, this is a married man. He's married, but he's not happy. And so these two, so he meets this other woman, the woman that's singing the song. They fall in love. But, and so at first she's the one that's, not really wanting to get involved. Because, it's a married man. So she kind of keeps her distance a little bit. But they are in love, but she's kind of, she kind of resists a little bit because he's married, so it's wrong. She's not supposed to, so she kind of stays out of it. Eventually, though, she decides, yeah, this is the guy I want to be with. So finally, she's ready to settle down with him. And now he is the one that gets cold feet. Cold feet means that you're afraid to do something after you have planned on doing it. Like maybe you want to jump out of an airplane, and so you plan on doing that. And then at the last minute, you decide, no, because it's too scary. That's getting cold feet. So he gets cold feet, and it's mostly because he's kind of a conservative guy. And so he's married. He needs to be faithful to his wife. So he can't do this. He can't leave his wife and marry this other woman, even though they're in love. And so now she is very disappointed about this because now she feels alone. Okay? So let's get to the lyrics, and I think they'll make more sense now that you understand the nature of their relationship. All right, so we start out, isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Okay, so when you talk about something as being rich, we usually think of money, right? You have a lot of money. It can be used in a different way, and it means for something to be a little strange, almost a little funny, kind of in a negative way, though. Like you say, well, isn't that rich? It means that, it's something kind of ironic, unexpected, but usually a little bit negative. Like someone does something bad that you didn't expect. You might say, well, isn't that rich? So she's right away, right at the beginning of this song, questioning their relationship. Isn't it rich? I mean, it's strange. Are we a pair? She's asking the question. Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. So what she means by saying she's on the ground is, remember, she was the one that couldn't decide. So she was emotionally floating around. Now she's on the ground. She knows what she wants. She wants to be with him. And now he is in midair. So this is kind of the ironic thing about isn't it rich? This is the irony. And it's negative. At least for her, because she can't get what she wants, because he is now in midair. In other words, he can't really decide. I mean, he sort of does decide, but he decides against her. He decides to stay with his wife. Okay? Then we have the famous line, "Send in the clowns." So in other words, send in something to make her happy, so something to make her laugh. Send in the clowns. In other words, she's very depressed by this. Okay, and we continue on. Isn't it bliss? Bliss means like happiness. So isn't it bliss means you're very happy. Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. So she's asking him, isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? Don't you like what we have together? And then she says, one who keeps tearing around. So there, I think she's talking about herself. Tearing around means that you're moving around a lot. So remember, she was the one that was unstable, unsure at first. So I don't know this whole story. I have not seen this musical, but maybe she was dating other people as well because she wasn't willing to commit to this guy because he was married. And, none of these other people made her happy, I guess. So she finally decides on him, but she has been tearing around, doing all kinds of things. And here, he can't move. He's the one who can't move. He cannot move out of the situation he's in. He refuses to leave his wife for this other woman. And then we continue. Where are the clowns? Send in the clowns. So again, this is just, we need a laugh. We need something funny. We need something happy because it's a depressing situation. So now we continue on. Just when I'd stopped opening doors, finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours. Making my entrance again with my usual flair, sure of my lines, no one was there. Okay, so most of this should be clear. There may be a couple words here you don't understand, like the word flair. Okay, so just when I stopped opening doors, she doesn't mean physically opening doors. She means, again, stop looking around at other guys. That's what she means. So she's not looking for anyone else. Finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours. So again, that line should be pretty clear. She finally realizes that she wants to be with him. So then she comes to him, and it says, making my entrance again with my usual flair. Flair is like drama. So she makes her entrance with drama. Maybe if you're at university, you might have one of those really wild and crazy students that every time he walks in the classroom, he or she is very loud. And so everyone notices. So they make an entrance. And that would be an entrance with flair, with drama. So she makes her entrance dramatically, sure of her lines. In other words, she knows what she's going to say. She wants to be with him. She knows what she's going to tell him. And no one is there. He's not there. Probably because he's with his wife. Okay, we continue on. Don't you love farce? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. But where are the clowns? Quick, send in the clowns. Don't bother, they're here. Okay, I included that last part there because this whole thing kind of goes together. I've kind of left the clowns part out after the main part, but this time I included it for a reason. You'll see. Okay, so the line, don't you love farce? For something to be farcical, that's the adjective form of that word, it means it's silly, but in kind of a made-up way. It's fake. It's fake. Like if something is a farce, it's like a lie, but it's usually kind of funny. Doesn't have to be funny. Doesn't have to be. But a lot of times it is. Now, I think... Now, this line is a little weird because the way she asks the questions is not usually like this. I think she's asking him if she likes that, because most of these she's asking kind of for approval. Like, isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? Because that's what she thinks. In this line, I say it's a little weird because she doesn't love farce, because I think we're talking about the relationship here. So this is not something she likes. And that's important when we get down to the don't bother, they're here line. Okay? I think she's actually asking him if this is what he wants. So you've been lying this whole time? Is this all a farce? Is this all fake? Was this all a joke? Is this all a lie, our relationship? Because she thought they had something. And then she says, my fault, I fear. And so this probably is a legitimate fear because remember, she was the one that was at first kind of floating around, not able to settle. So maybe she feels like she wasn't serious enough from the beginning. Or maybe she feels like she's being too strong. So she, like saying she wants to be with him while he's still married. So kind of maybe that scares him away. Could be either of those. Okay, then it says, I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. Okay, that should be easy enough to understand, right? She thought that he would also want to be with her. Because remember, he did it first. That's what he wanted. So she thinks that's what he wants. And now she's decided that's what she wants. So that's what she goes after. And then she says, sorry, my dear. Because again, maybe her going after him is what scared him away. Because remember, the last part of the song was that when she makes her entrance, no one is there. So he's gone. He's taken off. Okay, then it says, but where are the clowns? Quick, send in the clowns again. And then it says, don't bother, they're here. That line is where Stephen Sondheim meant that in the way of being a fool. So you've been tricked. So what she's saying here is that she's the fool. She's been tricked. So she's really feeling badly. She feels like this man tricked her. Okay, so then we get to the last part of the song. We have Isn't It Rich again? Isn't it queer? A lot of times today when we say queer, it means someone that's gay. Back then, it meant more like just weird. Is it strange? Losing my timing this late in my career. So this is kind of a weird line because I'm not exactly sure what it means when it talks about in her career, because we're talking about a relationship. But I don't think it really means career. I think she just means in her life. And what she's saying is that it's just strange to lose your timing. And what she means about losing her timing, I'm pretty sure. Again, we don't always get explanations for all these lines. We did get some explanation, at least, from Stephen Sondheim about using clowns. But I think what she means here, losing her timing, again, we go back to the story once again. Remember, she was the one that was all floating around when he wanted to be with her. Now she wants to be with him, and now he won't do it. So their timing didn't match up. If she wanted to be with him right away, they would have been together. So her timing is off, and she's too late. You notice, and it says losing my time this late in my career. Now, it's not saying her timing was late. She's saying she's losing it late in her career, but I think there's a reason why they talk about it being late. Okay, so she loses her timing. So it's the timing of when they want to be together. It doesn't match up. Okay? And then we finish off, and where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Well, maybe next year. So in other words, she is still not happy. There are no clowns. There should be clowns. So there's nothing there to cheer her up. That's what Stephen Sondheim meant by clowns. Just laughing, being happy. She needs something to make her happy, to make her laugh. Because this is all very sad, this whole situation with this relationship. And there are no clowns, so she's still feeling sad. So she says, well, maybe next year. So maybe sometime in the future she can be happy again. And that's the end of the song. Now, that last verse there, isn't it rich, isn't it queer, losing my timing this late in my career, where are the clowns, there ought to be clowns, well, maybe next year. That is a little bit of a weird verse, and so there are a few versions of this song that I've heard, which are quite short, because they leave that off. The version you just heard does have that. Judy Collins leaves that in. But some singers will take that out, and they'll finish the song with, don't bother, they're here. Especially since it's kind of a more powerful line, given what it means. It means that she's been made a fool of, basically. So some versions of the song, they'll just finish it there. But Judy Collins does sing that last verse. Okay. So that is Send in the Clowns by Judy Collins. And as we always do, I will give you a few other songs to listen to by Judy Collins. One is going to be obviously Both Sides Now, which we did last week, but we did Joni Mitchell's version because she wrote it. But Judy Collins' version of it is the most famous version of it. So I recommend listening to Both Sides Now, Albatross, Since You Asked, Farewell to Tarwati, which I may be pronouncing slightly wrong. Sorry, it's a little bit of a weird word, Tarwati. And, of course, Send in the Clowns, which we just did today. A couple of those, Albatross and I believe Since You Asked. Albatross and Since You Asked are both written by Judy Collins. And they're both pretty good songs, too. So I wanted to include those. Even though I think Both Sides Now and Send in the Clowns are her two most famous songs, neither of them are written by her. So I wanted to make sure I included a couple of songs that were written by Judy Collins in there as well. I'm certain Albatross is written by her. And Since You Asked, I believe is written by her. So again, those songs were Both Sides Now, Albatross, Since You Asked, and Farewell to Tarwati. Of course, along with this song, Send in the Clowns. So those are the songs I recommend you listen to by Judy Collins. Okay. Thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Please stay with us and tune back in next week for another great song And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical musings, musical